we are gonna attempt to catch creek crappie. That's right, we already know that the creeks hold lots of smallmouth, but do they hold crappie? Let's go out there and see if we can find a pile of them, and if we do, we'll talk about the specifics behind catching creek crappie. Stay tuned, should be a fun episode. All right, folks, that did not take long, and we got a beautiful, thick, healthy, white crappie there. Let him go. So this spot is my first stop. I'm looking for something very specific, and what I'm looking at is current. I'm very much looking at current. All up in here, we have pretty still water, but as you can see by the bubbles, we got a bit of moving water. And what those crappie really like to do more often than not is they like to hug just off of where those rocks are. They like to be in the rocks, they like to be in that cover just off a current seam. We got a little bit faster moving here. It's very subtle, but just to the left of it, the water's a bit more slack. And we also have the cover, the bank, the rock, and those fish set up right up in that rock, just on the current seam. And usually where you find one, you'll find multiple. All right, guys, there's crappie number 2. And as you can see, these are very quality fish. These creeks are full of bait fish, and these crappies really plump up on all those bait fish. Like I mentioned in the intro, a lot of people go to creeks for bass fishing and smallmouth. But I'll tell you what, guys, these creeks also have some really nice crappie. This is a very small creek. As you can see by the size of the river, there's not much to it. And it holds some good fish, and they thump it. There's crappie number 3, and it's a black crappie, guys. They need that moving water. That subtle bit of current just makes all the difference, guys. We know that crappie like slack water, but they like hanging out in the slack water. You need to have some of that moving water. The slightest bit of moving water in that transition, that very subtle seam, is so important to these creek crappie. That is where you can expect to find them stacking up. Nowhere else have I found them really stack up, and that is 3 off of one spot. And I work this stuff very thoroughly, guys. Those fish will be in a 2 by 2 foot pocket, and you can just pull 10 or 11 out of there sometimes, even on these small creeks. You just got to work these areas thoroughly and find out where the sweet spot is, and you can come across a pile. It's super cool. We've come up on our second spot, and guess what? It's the exact same kind of spot as where I pulled the last 3 out of. So there's a little black crappie there. And what we have, just like always, is we have a current seam there. However subtle, it's there, and we have it pooling into deep slack water, and that's where that crappie came out of. Very pattern oriented. So we're gonna pitch that back out there and see if there's a couple more on this current seam. Here's another one. That's a nice black crappie right there, folks. And this spot is pulling me in, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna back off it a little bit because I don't want to spook these fish. So this is crappie number 5, guys. Beautiful crappie there, beautiful white crappie. Again, shoulders, guys. Creeks produce really quality fish. They're very stout, very thick fish. You can always count on those creeks having fish that are not starved. Get that one back. Let him swim off. I did switch to a more natural profile jig. I had a black one on really early in the morning, but this water is pretty clear and those fish can find jigs really easy in water. Even in the darkness of night, those fish can work off movement and they can find lures this size very easily. In my opinion, even fairly decent in quite stained water. So I did switch to a very natural profiled and colored jig. I'm still working that 16th ounce jig head. It is a perfect weight to get to bottom and just work the different depths of the water column. But there's not a lot of water column to work in these creeks, so it makes it really easy to fine tune these fish. Pitch out there, find that current seam, start reeling, and those crappie will pick it up. There's another one. Thumped it. Look at that. Unless that's a, oh, that might be another crappie. Nope. Look at that. A lot of green sunfish you'll pick up too, guys. Lots of green sunfish. Hey, there's number 7. That is a beaut, guys. Beautiful creek crappie right there. Number 7. Let's keep going. Number 8 right there. There's number 9. Thick one. Beautiful crappie. Look at the tail on that. Giant. It's a 12-inch fish. That's 1 dozen right there. Number 13 is gone. Gone, gone, gone. Number 13. That jig is gone. What I did next was I paddled a whole mile upstream without stopping to my 3rd and final spot. And what I noticed right when I got to that last spot was that the pool was there, the deep pool I was looking for, but there was absolutely no current, and that was a big red flag to me because those crappie love that subtle amount of current. There were a ton of bass, but that's not what I was looking for. They were just what I was catching in my attempt to find crappie in that 3rd pool. There were no crappie to be found. So what I ended up doing after thoroughly fishing that 3rd pool was I came all the way back down a mile downstream, went to that initial 2nd spot where I'd had really good luck, and I just combed it for crappie. Because about that time it was midday and those fish were set up on that spot differently. So what I want you guys to do on this next clip is I want you to pay attention to how long I reeled before catching this first fish. And what's going on there is I'm searching for those fish. I made a long cast and I'm just slowly working to find these fish. I'd let that jig fall all the way to bottom. I'd just slightly pick it up off bottom and I'd just slowly reel it back to my kayak, making long casts to comb that entire pool because those fish were now relating differently in that same spot. So check it out. Check out how long I let this jig soak. All right, folks, it's 11 o'clock on the nose and this might be the last crappie of the day. And guess what, folks? I'm in the same spot I was at this morning. And you know what's interesting is when you come to a different spot on the river during a different time of day, you can see how those fish set up differently. Those fish are no longer right off the ripple. They're in the shaded area and they're deep and they're a lot pickier, guys, which is really typical of crappie behavior. So I always like to get out early. I always feel like the bite is best right as the sun rises. But it's really interesting to see how those fish's behavior changes as the day progresses, and that one hit it on the fall. But it's just a matter of fine-tuning those fish and trying to find out where they're at and how they're set up on the river, because it does change based on the time of day. But obviously I keyed in on them again. It took me a couple minutes to find those fish again in the middle of the day, but they're still there and still biting. You just got to kind of change with the fish and with the time of day, with their temperament, and just work those areas, guys. Just find them. You just got to find them. They will bite. You just got to do a lot of experimentation to figure out what it is they want and how they want it. So we'll call it a day here soon. There's another one now that we found them. That's 3 casts in a row, guys, because we figured out where they're sitting. They're further off, but they're still there and still hitting. Just set up a little bit different and a little deeper in the middle of the day. They're in that shade. They're relating to the shade more than they're relating to the current seam. Depth, current, and light intensity. That will help give you an idea of where those fish might be at in any different part of the day. No doubt does light intensity play an increasing role on how crappie set up on creeks and lakes, especially as the day progresses and that sun gets higher, especially when you have direct sunlight. So that shade is a crucial component later in the day. The only other thing I want to talk about is the type of rod I use for when I'm creek crappie fishing. What I like about a stiff rod on the creeks is you can just easily pop that snag out with your stiff rod tip. Combined with a light wire hook, you can usually either pop it out or bend that hook out by having that stiff rod tip. And you can get your snags out and lose a lot less jigs. So that's the only reason why I really like using a stiff rod for crappie fishing on creeks. It's just for the sake of helping you pull snags out. That's all I got for you guys. Take care, like and subscribe. If you dig the video and other content, feel free to check out all the stuff, but y'all take care. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for watching the videos, and I'll see you guys soon with more content. Peace.